G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and today I'm excited to take you through some of the new features in Animate CC, which was recently updated like on the 1st of November. This is by far the most exciting update that Adobe have come out with for Animate CC so far, but let me just take you back in time a little bit to this last year of updates with Animate CC, because this last year has been incredibly exciting. For those of you who don't know, the entire platform used to be Flash Professional. Flash was rebranded and relaunched as Animate CC, which is super cool because it sort of detaches it from the notion of it being a producer of Flash Player content. It really shows that Adobe are taking Flash, making it an animation program, which it always has been, but really pushing it forward to be a platform agnostic animation power tool. And with every single update, there have been really amazing and powerful features implemented into Animate CC, and this current update is no different. But I want to take you back a little bit to the first release, where we have the vector brush implemented, 4K video, rotatable canvas, colored onion skinning, and my personal favorite with that release, dynamic color swatches. Next, we saw the implementation of things like Creative Cloud Library syncing, more enhanced brushes, and my favorite, the graphic symbol thumbnails, or specifically something they call frame picker, which you can see the link to the video that I did last on that update in the description. I've been doing videos on the main core updates as they've come out. And then we arrived to the current release, which is Animate CC 2017. Ooh. So let's have a quick look at the main highlight features that you can see here. We have an integrated virtual camera. This is a mic drop one. This is a big one, and that's why it's first and foremost on this list. And I've been using it in the pre-release for a while, and the best part about Adobe and the people and the team making Animate CC is they're so receptive to feedback, and I've been discussing it with the director of the producer of this program, and he takes my feedback when I give him feedback on the camera, which is so exciting because I know all of you have been wanting a native camera for a long time, and a lot of people have asked me about my VCams and blah, blah, blah. Collaboration with CC libraries. This is becoming more and more powerful, the integration of using Creative Cloud libraries in Animate, which is super cool. And we'll go through that in a bit as well. So obviously there are different parts of the release that are valuable to different areas and modes of working, different industries, whether it be banner ad production, video game, or online game production, so on and so forth. But of course, we, and I in particular, are interested in animating, be it short form animation content, videos for clients, or for your own YouTube channels. And the three I'm going to take you through today, which are of most interest to me and hopefully you, are the integrated virtual camera, the vector brush improvements, and the CC libraries expansion. Before we jump into it in this video, I want to point out a couple of things. First and foremost, all these release features are on a web page, which I'll link to in the description. There's also this other web page, which I'll show you here, which has new feature summaries for this version of the release. Again, link is in the description. And for those of you who are really wanting to jump headfirst into Animate CC but are unfamiliar with it, I have an ultimate guide to Animate CC, which links to loads of different videos and goes through all the different tools available. And it's also part of a playlist where I upload the updates as they come out. For example, this video. So go check that out. I'll put the link on the screen and in the description. I highly recommend checking that ultimate guide and that playlist out to really have a solid familiarity with the current version of Animate CC and its tools. So the moment you've all been waiting for, the integrated camera in Animate CC. I'm actually going to start off by opening up a scene where I can show you how I previously used and created camera motion. So this here, this weird little box looking thing here is called a VCam, but was sort of a manual integration or manual creation of a VCam. And it didn't work for everyone, but it worked for me. And if I double click to enter here, you can see I have a layer with code in it. And this is what the code looks like. I don't know what it means, but a friend of mine put it together once and it seemed to do the trick. So it was this manual creation, this manual integration of a virtual camera, which enabled me to tween it around and essentially create camera motion in Animate, because it meant that when I rendered it, I got this.
The teller was reminded of a tail, and he flailed, quickly flicking to the picture of the sail, speaking fast.
So that enabled me to create motions with the camera without turning everything into a symbol and moving it all around the stage. It just gave me a little box I could move around and do that with. But guess what? I can now click delete. I've gotten rid of that completely. There is now no camera. I'm also going to reduce the lag a little bit because the background has a big blur on it and it's a very, very high resolution background. So I'm just going to bring the blur down to 0. There you go. So now when I play through, it should be a bit less laggy, which is good. It's just so you know, that background image is like thousands and thousands of pixels high and wide. So it's putting the processor through a bit. So now the moment you've all been waiting for, let's click this little button here. You can see there's a little camera, little button here, right here. Yep, I'm going to click that. And it's added a camera. Now you can see that there's weird box selection. That's the size of the stage behind it. But now there's also this little toolbar down here with a slider. On top of that, there's also a new layer up on the timeline here called camera. And this is essentially an object that I can tween and move around. For example, if I click and drag this, you can see that the camera itself is sort of staying in the same position while the stage is being moved around behind it. But really what's happening is the camera is moving. We're just sort of seeing it through that viewport. So if I go to my first frame, I can zoom in by dragging this little slider to the right here. And you'll notice that once I drag it to the right and let go, it sort of resets that position so that I can do that a few times all the way in and all the way in. And it just resets again and again and again, and I can scale infinitely. So let's say in our first frame, I want to be viewing about here on the frame, and that's going to be the first frame of our camera. There's also another little button here to toggle rotation. So at the moment it's selected to zoom, I can click this and move the slider, and you can see it rotates the camera. Once again, it looks like it's rotating the stage, but because we're viewing through the camera, it makes it easier for us to see what it's going to look like in the end. Beyond that, here's another amazing little addition to the camera tool. As if that wasn't enough, there's this little cropping selection, this clip content out of stage button immediately to the left of the percentage zoom box. And if I click that, you can see that it removes everything outside the parameters of that box. Now, it doesn't actually remove it, it's just hidden from your view, but this is super useful and something that my VCam couldn't do. And I tried to find ways to do it, and it was never effective and it was bad. Whereas now I can essentially control my camera. I can rotate, I can do my zooming and all that stuff without being distracted and without seeing messy stuff on the edges of the screen. And this can be really fun and a very clean way to work with your camera and create your shots. So let's start with our first frame on here. Let's leave this clipping thing on for now. There's this bit where his head pops up. So I'm going to create a first keyframe and then another keyframe here when his head popped up, and I'm going to drag the camera across. Let's zoom out a bit too to show his body in surprise, like so. Now I've just selected another tool and I can go in and edit and, you know, unhide everything and just work normally. But if I want to reselect my camera, there's actually a little button here, which is camera with a shortcut C. So you can actually just press C and it will reselect your camera if you want to make your adjustments. But it's worth noting that if you want to return to your camera after going back to your other tools, it's either here in the toolbar or use the shortcut C. I'm going to add a classic tween between these frames and create a custom easing, bringing it in and out like so. And this creates a motion that pulls out with an ease in and an ease out, and already this is a nice dynamic little shot, and it's so clear to see what's happening because we're cropping the outside of that screen. Oh, this is fun. All right, so next in the animation, he goes across to the side of the screen and starts digging around. So we're going to have the camera follow him. So as soon as he starts to turn, let's say around frame 44, I'm going to select the frame where he has hunched down and is starting to dig around. I'm going to move the camera across and right up to where it clips about there and create a tween. And this is going to be a really strong ease out. So a very short ease in like this and a really strong ease out. And this will create a really sharp motion in that direction like so. There you go. Just make sure if you're using this camera tool and you're making tweens, I highly recommend creating easing in and out. It's really important. If someone on a film location had a big camera and they were going left to right, it's not going to just go zzz, like it's going to ease in and slow down, and you really want to create that dynamic feeling of motion, like it's being followed, like we're following along with it physically. So now our viewing experience has weight and it's so clean and clear to see. Anyways, I know I've bragged about this enough. So you'll notice here that there's a scene change, right? And obviously things look a bit messy here. That's easily fixed because I can just create a new keyframe on my camera layer and it's just created a new duplicate keyframe here by hitting F6. And I'm just going to zoom in and drag it across. Let's say we want to view it in a very specific area like this. And then we can hit play. There we go. And we might even want to add some impact. So when the finger hits the page, we can have a very short little zoom in. So create 2 keyframes, zoom in like that. Right click, create motion tween and ease out. And let's watch that in context. Zoom. There you go. Oh, how cool is this? And then when we return to our previous scene, I might want the camera to pick up exactly where I left off. So rather than just hitting F6 and repositioning the camera, I can actually go to this previous camera position and treat it like a normal object. I can Control-Alt-C, which is the equivalent of right click and copying the exact keyframe. And then I can go back to here, this frame above this new shot, and hit Control-Alt-V. Ta-da! Camera is exactly positioned where we were when we left off. I'll use that as a foundation, and I want to actually bring it across more, center it on this character here, about there. So he's going to start speaking, so let's hit play and see what he says.
Let me tell you of the tale of the mouse upon the mast.
Let me tell you of the tale of the mouse upon the mast. And he's moving quite a lot. And this is where, when the camera zoomed into sort of a shoulders up shot, if he's moving up and down and around, a cameraman is going to be moving around and following them. And there's usually a little bit of drag, so that, for example, the camera will arrive to the position that he's talking into and resting in just like 2 frames later, and it will ease out. And let's have the camera zoom in dramatically, not extremely, but just a little bit.
The tail?
When he says tail, to add some emphasis. So I'm going to create a new keyframe. We'll drag this in and bring this across up here like that. Right click, create classic tween. And again, I'm going to create a custom easing, this time with a bit of an extreme motion here, nice and strong. And again, if I'm not happy with that position, I can just move that end frame, let's say to the left.
With the tail.
You can just move any of these keyframes in any way or direction you want, and it keeps the integrity of the motion you've already created. Now we have a head position where he goes up quite extremely. So again, about 2 or 3 frames later than where he lands, I'm going to pull the camera up, maybe zoom in slightly more, like so. Right click and create an ease out. Now you'll notice with that ease out, the camera is moving before the person is, which doesn't make sense. This is just a little bit of a trick for you. I highly recommend having the camera just a little bit behind. So I've created this more of an ease in to an ease out instead of just an ease out.
The mouse upon...
There you go. And let's have a bit of fun. Let's add some rotation, right? I'm going to toggle across to rotation. So let's have the camera tilt up with his head just a touch. And in this tween,
the mouse upon...
you'll notice it pulls up to the right like that.
Of the mouse upon...
And I'm going to do the same here by dragging the camera down and then have it rotate slightly back to the left and zooming in, nice and intense. So now creating a tween once again with an ease in and an ease out.
Of the mouse upon the mast.
And then we have one last shot where they're in the town square. If I want to reposition my camera and see the whole shot, I'm going to create a new keyframe and turn off that cropping. So then I can just position, zoom out, and really just put it in the exact position I want. I also want to reset my rotation. Now, if I want to do this manually, like you can click and you'll see that it's straight, but there's also in the camera properties panel in the properties section here, there's a rotate and zoom area where I can actually enter, let's say 30, and it will rotate 30 degrees, or 0 and it will snap to 0 degrees rotation, which is good to know in case you want to reset to 0 degrees rotation without a reference. So let's start off with the camera sort of centered and zoomed in a little bit, and then we're going to have a frame toward the end where it's zoomed, oh, that's rotation, where we're zoomed out to the edges of where the camera can go. And I'm just going to create a classic tween with no easing just because it's a steady motion, and put on that cropping, and now we can watch the whole thing in context, and already that quickly and easily we've created an entire shot with camera motion. Super easy to do and to make changes to, but also really clear to see and to preview because we can crop out all the edges and just watch what it's going to look like in the actual program itself.
The teller was reminded of a tale, and he flailed, quickly flicking to the picture of the sail, speaking fast. Let me tell you of the tale of the mouse upon the mast. So the jester sat with interest in the story being told, which described the little...
Yay! Okay, cool. That's enough. That's the camera. So go check it out and go have fun and play with it. Update your Animate CC if you're subscribed to the Creative Cloud. And if you're not, what are you doing? Subscribe to the Creative Cloud today. So there you go. That's the camera. That's all we'll do with the camera for now. And we've definitely banged on about that enough. I'm just going to open up a new file, a new ActionScript 3 file, and we're going to look at the last two features that I want to talk about with you today. The first of these is the updated vector brush tool, which I have very little experience with. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to just play with it now, have a bit of fun with it, and speed up the process and talk you through the things I discover and the applications I would personally see for using it. Now, the program has had a vector brush tool already. There are a few different vector brushes, to be honest. There's the default, which I've been using for years and still prefer, because it's just creating that vector area that you can draw on and blah, blah, blah. But there's also the paintbrush tool. You can open the brush library by going Windows Brush Library, and you can see a whole bunch of defaults here. Double click on the brush you want to paint with, and you can draw. As you can see, it's quite thin, so I'll just up the size of my stroke. And there you have it. With each stroke, I'm creating that brush. So I'm going to play around. Apparently now, though, with the update, aside from being able to create your own custom brushes and add them to Creative Cloud libraries, you can also apply pressure sensitivity, which I'm going to experiment with, and I'll talk you through my experience in the process. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've played around with the brushes for a mere 15 minutes and I've really had fun with them, which is interesting because the very first iteration of the vector brush tool, I wasn't 100% sold on as far as how I would use it or if I would personally use it. But after a few different updates and releases, it's evolved to the place where I would absolutely use this for different things, and it's really fun and organic. I'm going to start off by showing you how to access the tool. Shortcut is Y, or you can select that button there in the paintbrush tool. As you can see, I've actually made a custom brush, the JAZZA repeat brush, where I can, do that and the JAZZA brush will appear. I'll take you through how to make your own custom vector brushes in a moment. Otherwise, in the brush library, you can see these defaults here, and to select and apply them to your brush, you simply double click and then it has been applied to your brush. Now, one of my favorite things about the brush tool now is that you can draw as a fill. To do this, you can select this tick box here in Paintbrush Options in the Properties panel to draw as fill. And what that means is with every brush stroke I create, I can sort of build things up. I can also turn on and off pressure sensitivity with this use pressure button here in the tools panel. So if I want to use this tool and let's say I want a charcoalish look, and with each stroke we get that sort of look. I'll bring the brush tool size around to 9 actually. So now as I draw as fill, I can sort of create a bit more of a sketchy look, and it's actually creating it as a fill object rather than a solid brush. This is really cool. So I can create much more organic looks than I might with the traditional brush. And as you see, if I draw really fine, it shows up as really thin, like so. And because it's painted it as a fill, I can select my lasso and select and delete or recolor or remove or resize actual portions of it. Alternatively, of course, you can paint in a very similar style without draw as fill selected, and let's draw a similar sort of object here, sort of a weird eye shape. Super easy to draw with. It feels basically the same, and these lines you see on the screen indicate basically how the brush is working and the calculations being applied before it applies the brush to them. The difference between painting in fill or as the brush vector mode is with the brush vector mode, you can actually select the lines themselves and reshape things. So long story short, that's how you paint with the vector brush tool. You can select different tools, change the sizes, use line weight or tilt settings if you want, which is super cool. But now let's talk about making your own brushes. So I have 3 little fun objects here I want to make brushes out of. So let's select the sword. All you need to do is have a vector area, a vector painted section that you want to turn into a brush, select it and right click, create paintbrush. There are 2 kinds of brushes, the art brush or the pattern brush. As you can see with the pattern brush, that's what the JAZZA brush was, is it sort of a repeat, but I can select the art brush and I can choose to scale it proportionally or scale between sections. I'm going to have it to stretch between the guides. What this means is if I move my selector area to just cover that blade, then I hit OK, only the blade will change in length. So I can bring up my brush size to make it a bigger sword in the display area, and I can have a long sword, or I can have a really short sword. That's kind of fun. There you go. And you could do the same with other things, such as pieces of wood or phalluses, whatever your mind can conjure. Let's do the same with our snaky here. Let's select him. I'm going to right click, create paintbrush. So I want this to be an art brush. Let's select the middle part of the snake, which will repeat. And now I have a brush where I can draw a snake, which follows that guide. As you can tell, I have to draw the start a bit straight, otherwise it looks a bit derpy. But you get the idea. I can now draw lots and lots of snakes. Hooray! Last but not least, let's select our wiener here. Right click, create paintbrush, and I'm going to select a pattern brush because I want it to repeat. We can select different options. We can stretch to fit, add space to fit, have an approximate path. Spacing, you can create spacing between the patterns. So if you add it, it will add spacing, or you can have less spacing. And then you can say what happens at the corners, either nothing or center the artwork, flank it, slice it, overlap it. You get the idea. I would personally, let's go with flank. Hit add, and now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a wiener brush. There you go. Look at that. I think this is the best thing I've ever made. So we've played with the camera, we've had a good look at brushes. The last thing we want to look at a little more is the CC Libraries panel. I'm going to delete everything on my stage here, and let's say I want to share my wiener and my sword, wow, that sounds weird, without actually uploading the entire file or animation to Animate CC's libraries. So what you can do is actually draw out your wiener and your sword, and I've painted these as fills for now, and I'm just going to delete everything except for one wiener and one sword, and I can save these individual objects to my Creative Cloud libraries without actually needing to save the whole animation file. To do so, they simply need to be symbols, so I'm going to select the wiener, hit F8 and convert it to a movie clip and call this wiener. I think I spelled that okay. Hit OK, and then I can select this plus sign, and you can see there's the option to add the entire animation or the symbols. I'm going to select just the symbols, hit OK, and as you see here, there is a wiener file that has just uploaded to my Creative Cloud working folder. I can do the same thing here with a sword. Let's make this a graphic symbol this time, and we'll call it sword, hit OK, hit the plus, and add that sword symbol. So now if someone else opens up Animate CC and they want to use either of these assets, all they need to do is click and drag them into the stage, and it's as easy as that. Now please excuse me as I add this video section in after I've recorded the initial video tutorial. Reason being is I actually spoke to the director of the program and asked a few questions about the brush and adding brushes, custom vector brushes to the CC library. So in answer to the questions I had, just so I can clearly communicate them to you here, if I want to add my sword to my custom brushes, I can by drawing the sword. Now I actually drew that as a fill, so I'm going to unselect draw as fill and draw my sword again. And then I'm going to select the stroke that I drew, and then in my CC libraries, Windows CC libraries, go into miscellaneous work. So you can see I have my actual movie clips in here, but I can select add content, and then you can see that there's a brushes tick box, which is only selectable if you have a brush stroke drawn from your custom brush. But then you can add it, and you can see that there is my custom sword brush. And as a result, I can actually now use this custom brush in Illustrator or any other program applicable with these custom vector brushes. So it's super cool that you can do that, but I will note it doesn't work if you paint as fill. You'll notice that you can only add the fill color. So the brush itself has to be drawn as the vector brush line rather than a fill. And then also this only works with art brushes, not pattern brushes. But when I asked about that, he did say you can't add pattern brushes yet. So that yet word keeps me hopeful for future updates. Anyways, just thought I'd let you know that you can add your custom art brushes to your CC libraries and share them. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is my little overview of some of the core updates that I'm most excited about with this recent release of Adobe Animate. But there are more things that I may have missed and that you can discover for yourself with the links in the description. And of course, go check out the Ultimate Guide to Animate CC playlist and video. Once again, links are in the description. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. And until next time, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for new content every week. If you want to support my work and get some goodies for yourself, head over to my store for archives, ebooks, digital brushes, video courses, and more. If you enjoyed this video, here's a link to another video you might like from this channel. And if you want even more, make sure to check out all my behind the scenes action on my vlog channel, Daily Jazza. Draw with Jazza is proudly sponsored by Adobe. Join the Creative Cloud today and get loads of incredible creative tools like Photoshop, Animate, Premiere Pro, and other apps for your computer or mobile device. That's it for now. Thanks for joining the arty party, and until next time, I'll see you later.